Miscommunication has always been a big part of my life. It's actually one of the most common things that happen while playing volleyball. The ball was mine, I shouted first. It's basically a game of emotions. Being misunderstood on the field in the heat of the game is pretty common, right? But if misunderstandings follow you up off the field, I think it's time you change something. I believe that when your signals are crossed is one of the worst situations you can find yourself in. Think about it. How many good opportunities you have lost just because of lack of clear communication? How many good relationships have gone to waste just because you couldn't communicate properly? Honestly, I'm tired of this. And when I think back to all those cases, I just wish people, including me, could learn to communicate properly overnight. But of course, that's not possible. By communicating properly, I don't only mean pleasant small talks. I mean all range of conversation, including conflicts. Even though people don't like confrontation, further reflection shows that you can't have a meaningful relationship without addressing complicated feelings. This is how the never-ending story of misunderstandings begin. Additionally, not only misunderstanding affects us on private level, it also affects big corporate lives as well. As you can see on this chart, miscommunication can lead to delayed and failed projects, missed performance goals, and lost sales. So, as you can see, pure communication makes companies poorer. To begin with, we need to understand what communication is. A lot of people say that communication is like throwing a ball of clay. So, that sounds pretty easy, right? You throw something to the other person, they receive it, and then send it back to you. But this idea assumes that the message stays the same from one person to another, when in reality, communication is much more complicated. Two people cannot understand information the same way, even when the words are the same, just because of our different beliefs, our different upbringings, and our different life choices. We can describe communication more like throwing a ball of clay. The main idea is still the same. You throw something to the other person, but instead of receiving it and sending it back to you unchanged, they change it based on their own beliefs and their own thoughts. When you receive your clear idea back, you begin to feel frustrated because your clear idea was changed so much that sometimes you can't even recognize it anymore. And that's really frustrating. And that's why frustration builds up and communication begins to crash. You start to attack the other person without understanding why they cannot understand you. For example, instead of saying, "Your actions make me feel like my feelings don't matter and that make me feel unimportant," people often say, "You're so selfish, you don't care about me." This word doesn't explain your position, they attack the other person. While other person is being attacked, they're starting to be in defense mode. Well, in defense mode, they don't listen to you, they're just trying to protect themselves. So, as you can see, clear communication cannot be done here, because you're not listening to each other, you're just fighting. And I encourage you to remember that when you're fighting each other, that's not the right way to do it. You need to fight your problems instead of your friends. To sum it up, effective communication requires recognizing and explaining your emotions better, rather than expecting others to assume what you mean. One of the techniques that I really like about communication is an aggressive way of speaking. An aggressive way of communication is not about being quiet, weak, or avoiding conflict. On the contrary, it's about explaining your feelings without attacking the other person. For example, sometimes you want to ask something, for example, from your brother. You might say, "Go clean up my room, help me do it." You didn't give him enough context to understand why he's supposed to do it. You need to say something like, "Could you please help me clean up my room? I feel really tired today and I would really appreciate it." You can also add that you really appreciate his help and that if he do it, it would mean so much to you, and that he need to do it only if he has free time right now, so he can see that you don't see yourself as the most important person in this situation. The next thing I'm going to talk about is how bad communication not only affects us on our mental health, it also affects our normal health with our body, because there was a study that show when we are feeling misunderstood, our diurnal cortisol level increases and our life satisfaction go down. So when you're trying to be understood clearly and have a good relationship with everyone, you're actually taking care of your diurnal cortisol slopes. Another thing that I would like to talk about today about communication is how to express your feelings without attacking the other person. Sometimes when we're trying to express our feelings, it leaks out as sarcasm, tension, or aggression, so the other person just thinks that you're being rude or distant to them. They're not understanding what's going on. For example, sometimes you might say, "Whatever, do what you want." That's sarcasm. Instead, you can simply name the feeling. I feel frustrated and disappointed right now. It doesn't weaken your message, it makes it more human. So, the main takeaway of this part is that non-aggressive communication relies on clearly naming your feelings instead of acting them out and speaking them through indirect aggression. You need to honestly explain why you feel this way to the other person. Sometimes you need to try to understand in their language so they can understand you better. Because, as you remember, we cannot understand information the same if we are not the same person. And speaking of honesty, the last thing I want to talk about today is how to avoid miscommunication. And that starts with being honest and truthful in all of your relationship. Honesty is not about blaming others or oversharing everything. It's about being authentic or present in all of your relationship. It means openly stating your feelings, even if it feels uncomfortable for you. This is how you can really deepen your bond with your friends and have a lot of more deep connections. Most importantly, as I mentioned before, you need to look at situations from the other person's point of view. You need to be curious about it. You need to try to understand it and sometimes even imagine how it feels to be in their position. That's how you truly understand a conflict. You can't ignore their words. You can't half listen. You need to try to listen with your whole heart and understand everything. Only this way you can have genuine connections and good conversations. The last thing I'm going to tell you today is how can you use all those techniques. And that sometimes when someone is judging you, they're not wanting to say something bad about your person, they're just trying to express their need that was unmet. For example, when your friends say to you, "You're always late, I'm so tired of this," they don't only mean that you're a bad friend or they want you to change. They're only trying to express their feelings in the way that they only know, because not everyone knows how to communicate properly. Not everyone learns these tools yet. So sometimes, instead of hearing judgment, we can try to hear underneath it. That shift alone can completely change our perspective on conflicts. Do you remember my example on volleyball? Those heated situations are unavoidable here. This is why, in volleyball, were created timely calls to prevent collisions on court. We can use our techniques that I introduced to you today to avoid collisions in real life and deeper connection with your loved ones and be more genuine with your friends. And that's how that never happy ending of this story might have a happy end. And before you go, I want you to remember this. Every misunderstanding can leak into distance. And sometimes, since distance can become permanent if misunderstandings aren't addressed in time. So you can choose yourself. Would you rather be misunderstood, or would you rather deepen your connection with your friends and be honest with them? And thank you for your attention.